Welcome back to the True Crime Lounge series, True Crime Lounge podcast. Um, I do have a Patreon that you can join for early access to scheduled episodes. I also have a merch shop for all your true crime gear. For any updates on my channel or podcast, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. With that being said, let's dive into today's episode, shall we? Today, we are going to be continuing on with our mini series of the Gallaudet murders. And Cold Case is one of my favorite shows, so you can actually go back and watch the episode. I'll try to find the link and attach it in the description so you guys can go back and watch it. But I definitely do recommend watching it. But with that being said, let's dive into part two, shall we? A fire alarm went off at Cogswell Hall during the early mornings of February 3rd, 2001. The RA who investigated the fourth floor came across Benjamin Werner, a 19-year-old resident. He was in his dorm room murdered, and the room was spattered with blood, and it looked as if a struggle had occurred. Benjamin apparently fought for his life, but once again the police arrived at to process the scene. Almost no one could believe that the two murders have occurred on the campus in the same dorm. Now, the autopsy revealed that Benjamin had stabbed multiple people in his head, chest, and had been stabbed multiple times in his head, chest, and neck. One lung had collapsed and his throat was cut open, and the knife had penetrated his skull in at least one place. Like Eric, Benjamin had lived alone. The police failed to locate the weapon in the room on the outside. However, they did notice a blood trail leading away from the room and toward the adjacent door, an indication that the killer had been injured. They collected samples, they ran tests to compare to so they should identify a suspect. They also found a bloody shoe print when a detective identified as a Nike cross trainer. Now, with two deaths in the same dorm, it is likely that someone had access to the key card and had committed a murder. So, a search had grounds to recover the bloodstained jacket and knife in a trash can beside the dormitory. The team of crack detectives um, determined that day before he had been found, Benjamin had failed to meet his two friends. As scheduled, it had not gone to he had not gone to class. He also had not kept a doctor's appointment, and that information helped narrow down the time of the death. That his mom, who heard from him daily, had not received a phone call or email from him since February 1st. Now, some people wonder if media coverage about the grand jury had triggered a copycat murder. The FBI was asked to assist and reward $10,000 was offered for information leading to an arrest. Students whispered about the serial killer hunting the dorm, but the idea was absurd. In fact, the similarity between the crimes seemed superficial as the victims had lived in the same dorm in the single rooms. The fatal attack had not been the same. Not were they not were there many similarities between the people. Unlike Eric, Benjamin had kept to himself and he was involved in many campus activities. An industrious student, his goal was to become an accountant. He was from San Antonio. Eric was from Minnesota. They did not travel in the same circles. Um, so the university police beefed up security, including a 24-hour implement checks on everyone entering campus, posting more surveillance cameras, and closing all gates except for the main entrance, as they had done the few months before following his death. They also recorded the license plate numbers of anyone coming and going from campus. Students were required to use their key cards to enter the door. enter the dorms, and more staff volunteers were recruited to stay in the dorms during the overnight hours. Cogswell Hall itself had been close to residents its residents reassigned itself to other dorms. Understandably, many students were worried about their safety. Murder in the dorm was a rare event, and Gallaudet had now had two. During the previous 2 years, according to the statistics gathered by the U.S. Department of Education, from 1997 to 1999, there have been 53 homicides on the college campuses across the country. In 1999, only 3 out of 11 nationwide had occurred in the dorms. Eric's mom, already in town, mobilized and pled with the students not to leave because that would only compound the tragedy. Nevertheless, several withdrew. The police quickly interviewed a number of students to learn if anybody from Cogswell Hall that night had been seen a stranger, especially near Benjamin's room. Mm, Yay, my order is officially being picked up. Anyway, they also wanted to know if anyone had set off the fire alarm, and although it was clear that Benjamin had been dead for at least a day, complicating the investigation, it was clear that the interpreters for every interview, time was the essence, but the process was slow. It was clear that the crime scene that the attacker had been injured, so the detectives watched for someone with recent injuries. They also kept eye on Benjamin's bank account since it looked like as if his checkbook was gone. The hunch had paid off. Bank records showed that the person who had visited Rick's Bank's branch on Friday, February 2nd, to cash a check. Detectives, knowing it could not have been Benjamin, requested the videotape, and as they viewed it, they they knew what the culprit who had probably committed the crime looked like. They had just they had to just identify him. On the suspect line of the check was a used laptop. However, there was no laptop in Benjamin's room, used or otherwise. Secret Service handwriting experts said that the check had been written by someone other than Benjamin. It was made out to a Joseph Messer, a freshman who had lived in Cogswell Hall. He proved to be a young man on the bank surveillance camera as well. They would arrest him. 10 days after the arrest, they had a suspect in another four of the students and potentially implicated on both homicides. He lived across the hall from Eric Plunkett and had been the one who alerted the RA to look in on him. That made him a potential suspect. Mesa, who was who was 20, he was from Begonia, Guam. On his body was fresh wounds and fingerprints matched those in Benjamin Vernon's room. His handwritten check had also matched. The police are ready for a blood analysis, and they had no doubt they apprehended a serial killer. A serial killer. Had he not been caught, he most likely would have killed again, and due to such offenders who committed these crimes, self-enrichment to go away.